Hello and welcome to Bury Our Bones with Cinema, the podcast that lives, breathes and dies classic movies, not so classic movies and everything in between. Once again, I'm joined by the Jonathan Groff to my Josh Gad, the wonderful Mr. Simon Key. In today's episode, we take an intoxicated tour of 1960s America with 1979's Hair. So join us as we lather on some extra volume shampoo, burn our conscription cards, and finally try not to go to war in place of one of our friends. This podcast contains spoilers.
Manchester, England, England, across the Atlantic Sea.
Well, you're kicking it off with one of the songs, and I have to say, as I've already explained to you prior to recording, that Hannah was incredibly jealous last night when I decided to watch this because she was at rehearsals, and Hair is one of her favourite musicals, although she's never seen the film, because we had an interesting conversation when she returned about the differences between the stage show and the film, which we will obviously get into as the discussion develops.
That's good to know, actually, because, well, it would be good to know, because I've not seen I've seen a bit of there's an old stage show performance that you can find, like the original London cast. It's like a bootleg of it on YouTube,
yeah.
and you can you can email someone for the full DVD. But I haven't seen it. I was first exposed to this. Well, actually, I was in a record shop in Barnum, which is a place near us, and I couldn't find any records in there. And then I went to a charity shop across the road, and then I picked up, or the guy, and I said, "Oh, you might like Hair if you like."
Sorry, did you just say you went to a record shop and there weren't any records in there?
No,
or do you mean there weren't any records that you wanted?
I think they were expensive.
Right, okay.
So I went across the road to a charity shop.
I was like, what kind of a record shop doesn't have any records?
I couldn't find any.
Yeah, I just said, do you have any records? We got CDs, son.
Yeah, so, and then this pink vinyl case came out with Hair on it, and it said Hair, and I you know when you have like a weird, you don't really know about something, but it's on the periphery, it's like in your mind, so you just have and I was like, Hair. It's like,
always heard of it, but you've never quite known what it is, and
the shopkeeper guy was like, oh yeah, Hair, that was big back in the day. He's like, really good music, and he's like, yeah, and there's even the production, there was naked people, and then I was like, and I was maybe feeling a bit prudish that day. I was like, ooh, I don't know. I thought Hair. And
I don't know what you mean, sir.
I'll take one. I took it. And then,
I take 3. Have you got any more?
And then I took it home, and then I don't really have a good record player set up, so I probably listened to it on a bad. And I was like, I don't know. Anyway, I got really into Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie, afterwards on Amazon, and then this was recently on there. And I was like, I've never really watched that, but I've seen all the clips, and I was like, I've wanted to watch it a little bit from like YouTube things, like, let the sun shine when they're marching, and the bit on the table, I got life, and then it gives me goosebumps actually. And then I sat down and watched this a couple of weeks ago. I was like, oh yes, like I was really happy. And at first, like most musicals, I think they're kind of a bit overwhelming, and then on the rewatch, you start to learn some of the songs that you don't, not just the famous ones. And then it all feels like, oh, I'll watch it again and again. And then I'm really happy that I've discovered Hair.
Yeah, I think with musicals, they are a format, whether it be film musicals or stage musicals. It really helps the more you see them, because it's like listening to a song for the first time and then never listening to it again, but you like it. When you go back and you go, oh, well, I like that song, but I can't remember how it goes. It's a little bit like that. I found watching this last night, I watched it on my own, and then when Hannah got back, I showed her some bits from it. And as I was showing her bits from it, I was suddenly going, oh yeah, I actually do quite like this. Like the first watching, I was a bit sort of like, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, it is a little bit like that anyway. It's quite, as you say, quite overwhelming. Even for musicals, this is quite overwhelming. But as I was showing a bit, so I was actually going, oh yeah, I actually do like this. And she was then coming at it from the stage show point of view and going, oh, that's different. Oh, that's different. Oh, okay, that's different. And I'm going, yeah, probably because it's the thing I saw first, and I think that's always what you're going to be drawn to a little bit more. But I'm going, yeah, I prefer it in the film, actually, from what you're saying, because there are massive, massive differences to the point where, other than the music, it kind of is very much a very different film, very different thing altogether. Because I think perhaps the thing the stage show is most well known for is they all get naked at the end of Act 1. And I was discussing this with Hannah, and there is literally no reason for it, because it happens in the song. Obviously, it's different how it's presented here, but in the song where he's saying about, do I go or do I, I can't remember the song now, which is really annoying. But the one where he's basically about to go, to get called up to the army,
Okay.
and he's like, do I live or die? What do I do? That
Mm.
one. And that's where it happens.
Okay.
But it's done in a slightly different context. But it still makes no fucking sense. I'm like, in other words, it just sounds like a gimmick to get people through the door and buy a ticket. Oh, it's got naked people on stage. Yeah, I'll buy a ticket then. That kind of thing.
And the OG cast in America, I think I've watched the thing. They weren't musical theatre people. They got like actual hippies and stuff.
Yeah, I think Diane Keaton
really
I think she was in it. Maybe not the original cast, but certainly in the in the late 60s, early 70s casts.
And it was these two blokes. They had the idea, and they had the sort of songs written down, and they like made up melodies for them, but they weren't really that musical, or they weren't like, no, they were musical. I think he was in it, but they were, they just had this idea, and they took it to this
composer
called Gout something, and then he was the guy that and he put it all together, and because the music in this, Ryan, I don't know what you think, but I honestly think it's really, really good.
Well, it's a snapshot of that time, isn't it? Like, you hear a bar. I mean, obviously, it starts with Aquarius, which is, one of the Fifth Dimension songs, and is a very iconic. Like, it's that song. If you want to tell people it's set in the 60s and there's a lot of drug use and a lot of hippie free love and all of that kind of vibe, you play Aquarius. It's that kind of thing. But you hear any part of the other songs, you are instantly drawn back to that sort of time. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to go, oh yeah, I'm in the swinging 60s. It's very much, and I suppose if you don't like that sort of music, it's very hard to get on board. But I wouldn't say I love that type of music, but things like Janis Joplin and obviously Aquarius and early Starship and things like that, I quite like. So the music here, I think, is an extension of that, and very much of its time.
I think it's timeless. What I love about it is I tell you what I don't love about new musicals is the bands, like the how they're recorded and stuff, and even like with Wicked and stuff. Like I can sort of enjoy it to some degree, but I'm not really enjoying it in a way of like rock and roll, because it's not rock and roll, but it's all very. To be fair, I've got loads of issues with new musicals like Wicked and how they're recorded and compressed, and how I think they mess around with auto-tune and pitch correction in there quite a lot. Whereas I love Jesus Christ Superstar, the movie, because there's some really raw performances. But with Jesus Christ Superstar, the Andrew Lloyd Webber one, the movie, it's got a really bad mix in the final for the movie, because the vocals are really loud and they put the band really low because they just overdubbed on top of the original band. This is a bit deep, isn't it? In any case, this movie here has a great soundtrack with it's mixed really well. You can hear it, everything. The bass guitar is going like electrifyingly pumping through some of these songs. It's like gospel choir. For me, this is music. This is maybe as good as music in musicals. I guess what I like about it is it's not really music from musicals. They're not really explaining the plot. It's just songs.
Yeah, I think musicals have their own sort of, it's its own genre. Like, I've always thought that the phrasing of musicals in, a lot of pop songs will have a clear verse, a bridge perhaps, and then a chorus, and very clearly defined sections. Musicals kind of don't have that. Usually, a lot of the time, it's very much, it's almost, and I wouldn't say rightly so, but it makes sense because essentially a lot of the time the characters are telling a story, and so therefore it's going on a journey. So it's kind of that. But yeah, the phrasing of musicals songs are very, very different to songs in not pop genres, but like, rock songs are very much have clearly defined sections and things like that. So that's always been a thing for me where it's like, okay, I can't tell where this song is going. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not good. I think what I like about particularly like this type of musical is it feels like musicians are the people creating the music
and performing it, yeah.
rather than musical theatre performers. Because my biggest pet peeve, and I'm probably literally going to piss off literally the entire musical theatre world here, my biggest pet peeve is that they all sound the same. Like, as much as people say about how good Jonathan Groff is, I mentioned him in the title, he does sound very, very similar to 90% of the rest of the people, because essentially they're interchangeable. They want, okay, now you're not going to be playing this role. We're going to get somebody else, and we need somebody who's just like that. And obviously, there are stars who are more diverse in their abilities and their singing styles, which is one of the reasons I really like Hadestown, because that's a musical where people are allowed to use their own accents. They very much have their own singing voices. It doesn't sound like every other musical. So I'm just going to wait for every musical theatre fan to put their pitchforks down. Particularly Hannah, she will probably be like, I can't believe you're saying this. But yeah, so this feels very much like it's, obviously it's a rock musical, but it feels very much like a band put this music together, and it just happens to be, oh, let's make it into a show.
But because for me, it's to the extent of the actual. It's not just the singers and the performers. To me, it's like the musicians in the band. Like in Jesus Christ Superstar, it's the band that did the original Jesus Christ Superstar concept album with like Ian Gillan from singing on it. I think Deep Purple guy. I think it was Joe Cocker's like actual band that played the Jesus Christ Superstar soundtrack. And then when they went to took it to film, they just overdubbed their vocal on that band, and that's why you got a really weird mix. I think they lost the masters in that one of those big fires they have in the studio. Anyway, but yeah, it is a real band, and on new musicals or the standard ones you see a lot. I just. They're not getting like Flea. Maybe there is. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but they're not getting like Flea to come in and play bass on like the new. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it will be more often than not, and nothing wrong with session.
Super
session musicians.
People turn up, get their money.
It's almost like they don't want any. They don't want any personality. So like, okay, I want you to play the notes, and that's it. Whereas more. I was listening to the bassist for Luther Vandross when he released Never Too Much, and obviously the first like note of that is a bass slide. It was like boom, and it's like that wasn't in the original music. It was just a guy coming along saying, okay, well I'll add a little bit of me in this, and he went, okay, well I'll do this then. And it's like you lose a lot of those moments, and particularly in rock circles, big conversations as to how this guitarist gets his sound and things like that. And you have a lot of individuality, which I agree with you is lost a lot of the time in musicals, because it is all about, not the same people aren't going to be doing it every single time. So it needs to be able to somebody, okay, well, we're going to have a different performer here. So it needs to be as, not all musicals, but a lot of musicals are, okay, now we need it to be not exactly the same, but we need it to be just like how we done it before, because that's what people are expecting, that kind of thing.
Also, like, it's all like, nowadays in musical, I assume everything's really queued up, like happens at a specific time. I might be wrong. Maybe they are a bit organic and flowing in certain ways, but how I imagine they run is that they're very, this happens then, it's all.
Yeah, well, I think certainly for singers, they use click tracks.
Okay.
Just for, resilience more than anything, because singing especially some musicals, singing the type of stuff you're singing every single night is going to play havoc with your voice. So they use click tracks in that regard.
And I totally get it, because if you're like in a pit underneath, like, you know, playing a band, or you're up on the rafters, they sometimes have them in Jesus Christ Superstar, I think. You know, you kind of, you're not really meant to be seen, and you're not supposed to be jamming it out with other people. I know there's some things that do it a little bit differently, but generally to be heard and not seen is you know, and that translates to the records they put out. It's just, you know, I'm waiting for a new music thing, and maybe it's already out, where I'm waiting for one like this. Like, for me, this is I also love, like, obviously film as a, you know, medium to communicate these things, and I think the director really made some. You know, read about some of the differences, and to me, this works as a sort of coming of age. You know, last night before a big change. It does really resonate with me. I love that main actor, by the way.
Treat Williams.
Claude.
Both, yeah.
I think he is.
So let's get his name up. Let's not forget his name. His name is John Savage.
John Savage. You know, when he turns up at that bus stop and he says goodbye to his dad, and his dad gives him like 50 quid.
Yeah,
and it's really bleak, and it's like silent. You just hear the road. I think it really is like immersive. I think that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it shows you very, very quickly. Okay, well, there's this elephant in the room, which I think as soon as he gets to New York, you forget about until sort of as we go through the narrative. But yeah, it's that bleak sort of thing, and you know, I think sometimes not knowing what you're going into is a lot better than knowing what's coming up sometimes, because I was like, oh, okay, what is this then? Is he going to New York to, you know, start a career or something? And then it was like, oh no, of course it's set in the 60s, so he's probably going off to Vietnam. And then it becomes, you know, more about sort of his last hurrah before he goes into the army, which is probably where the first difference comes along, because in the stage show, Claude is already one of the group. He's very much in this. I'm not going to say tribes. That's not the right phrase.
I think that's what they're called in this, the tribe.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
That's why I wanted to say it then. As soon as I said it, I was like, that doesn't sound right. So he's already part of that, and it's more about him leaving that and going to war and, you know, questioning himself, rather than him being expressed and opened up to this world that he's not known before. And obviously, I think that tells a different story. It's very much a different, you know, character arc. So immediately it's very, very different. And, you know, which side of the fence you fall on is probably more personal preference. I personally quite like the fact that he seems a bit uptight and a bit sort of, you know, I've only ever known a ranch, and I've only ever worked on a farm, and then he goes to New York, and it's like, oh my God, this place is like a whole nother world, you know, and he meets these people of, you know, all different races, all different backgrounds, you know, different sexualities, and it's like, oh, has this been here the whole time?
Yeah.
You know, whereas obviously in the stage show, he's already a part of that. It's more about, you know, leaving something you're a part of to be a part of something else that perhaps you don't believe in.
Yeah.
So that's one of the differences. The other than, you know, songs are placed in different places and different things, the biggest difference is that, because when Hannah came home, I was like, we were talking about it, and I was explaining, you know, sort of like, oh yeah, because I was like, the first hour and a half, for a lot of it, I was like, what the fuck is this film? It was very much like, what am I watching? And it's like the last sort of half an hour, it starts to kind of come together a little bit more. So I was just going, can I just go through the story with you just to make sure I've got the right, you know, because she knows it better than I do. So I said, you know, so basically Claude goes to New York and finds this, you know, these people, and becomes quite good friends with a lot of them. He then gets called up to the army. He then goes, you know, he's about to get called into war, and they're like, no, we need to go and see him before he goes. And so they go to Nevada, and then they do a switcheroo. And then unfortunately Berger goes, and she's like, what do you mean switcheroo? I'm like, well, they switch, don't they? And the biggest difference in the musical is that when they go and meet Claude in Nevada and they, come on, I'll switch with you so that, you don't get caught and there's a person missing and they're out looking for you, I'll go in your place. That doesn't happen. So the whole thing of Berger going to war by accident doesn't happen. It's just Claude all the way. And I'm like, oh, that's the best thing I liked about this was the whole, like...
It makes you think, like, it's all, that is a real thing that leaves a mark, like Berger, people, there's all these questions like, God, so many people didn't want to go and had to go, you know what I mean? And it raises all these things.
And it raises it in a way, and it's like, not only does he not want to go, he's going so that somebody else can just go and have a picnic and go and, like, just have, like, a final moment with the person he loves. Like, so he definitely doesn't want to go. You know what I mean? Like, he's not even supposed to go. Yeah. So that part isn't in the stage show. And I think, because, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, because this, as a stage show and as a film, in the 60s and 70s, it's like the only thing they don't really, like, poke fun at and perhaps talk about a taboo is religion. But they have sexuality, they talk about race, they talk about basically every taboo other than religion. And even then, you could probably argue maybe they do. So it's like, some of the songs in there, you're like, especially in 2025, you're like,
it's a bit mental.
Whoa, this is quite crazy. And the song I want to talk about is I Like Black Boys, I Like White Boys. I don't know if that's the actual name of the song, but that's the gist.
Like, they seem like two different songs.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at, like, the track list. I haven't listened to this separately or anything. I've just watched the film a few times.
In the musical, obviously it splits between the army officers and the three sets of women. Yeah. Two sets of three women, so the white women and the black women.
Yeah.
In the musical, there's no guys singing it. It's just those two sets of women. Okay. And I'm like, it was interesting speaking to Hannah, because I'm like, looking for a hidden meaning and looking for, ironically, things to talk about on a podcast. I'm going, okay, well, so what do they actually mean there with that song? Now, in the musical, Hannah's like, oh, it's literally just the fact that, they're saying what they like and that's what they want to have sex with, and that's who they're attracted to. And I'm like, all right, okay, so it's kind of superficial face value type thing. Whereas here, what I took away from it, because you've got the army officers saying it as well, obviously it's quite jovial and it's quite a fun song, but looking for that sort of, like, scratch beneath the surface moment, and I'm like, well, these are army officers and these are people who are going into the army to go and fight for their country and for war, and it's like, they don't care if you're black, white, gay, straight, whatever. They don't care, because you're just another body. And that, I think that's what I got from it, was the fact of, like, it doesn't matter who you are, we want you because we're going to war. So it doesn't really matter how you identify, what your life views are, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, because we need you because we're going to war. And then it's further kind of enforced with that ending, where it's like, they literally have the wrong person, but it doesn't matter because we've got the body, we've got enough bodies.
It's grim.
It's like a real sort of, like, grim moment, and actually one that isn't in the musical at all, because it means something totally different. And I was like, I don't know how I'd feel without that, because that's such a poignant kind of moment at the end. And
the switcheroo.
Yeah, it's very...
I was just about in, so right. What I would say, I was in Croatia once with Christina. We went on a few different countries on a train, and then we was in Zagreb. And this is my actual first exposure to hair, right? So we sat in this bar, and there was a man called Dragan, or Dragon, and he was like...
Or Dragon.
Yeah, and he called us in there, because, we sat in there, and they were playing good music, actually. And then, you know what it's like when someone starts, like, but, you sort of barred shoulders and you start wanting to talk. It's like, oh no, they're going to want to talk. And he was he started talking to me anyway. Before he knew it, he was buying me drinks, and he had a friend with long hair, like he looked like he was from the cast of Hair. This friend, and he was drawing landscapes with crayon. Right, so this we're in a bar with these people. The people were trying to close because he had a uni exam the next day, and this dragon who was like come back from LA, who was some sort of movie guy, he kept buying everyone drinks. He's like, no, you're not going to bed yet. You're not going to bed yet. Anyway, really drunk, speaking to this hippie guy, and he says, that was around the time I was really into Jesus Christ Superstar for the first time, and then he said, I've only ever seen one musical. I've seen Hair, the performance, and he said it changed my life. He was like, I've seen it in person, he hadn't seen the film, he'd seen the stage show, and I believe him.
Yeah.
I reckon, he had very long hair and he was drawing landscapes with a crayon. Like, this guy's a hippie. And I reckon, was he a hippie before seeing hair? I don't know. Maybe he was.
He's actually an accountant from Oxford.
Maybe he was like Bukowski, whatever his name.
Yeah.
Claude. Yeah. So I think it's hard for me because I think I would probably appreciate, these guys they really believed in it. And also the director, when he saw the stage show, he was like, every song in it is a banger. He was like, every song's so good. And he was really taken by it. And that's why he initially wanted to, I think he was talking to them and he said, if you ever want to turn this into a movie, really happy to do it with you. And then they were like, yeah, okay. And then I think that he told them what he was going to do with it, and they're like, whoa, which always happens. And then,
I bet apparently they didn't really like it, did they?
No.
So,
and then sort of 10 years later or whatever, they contact him. It's like, that hair thing, you start for doing it. He's like, yeah. And obviously at that point, it's a totally different time. I know this is a conversation that goes around the movie, but maybe why it's not, if it came out in the 60s, it wouldn't. Having that separation between not being in the 60s and everyone at that point was sick of like hearing about the Vietnam War, I think, and when this movie came out, like it would be like, I don't know how we imagine like sort of like emo cultures have been in a way for us.
Well, I think I think it probably came out at a time where it wasn't a sore subject so much anymore. Almost like how, with Iraq and Afghanistan, you had, that conflict. And then sort of 10, 15 years later, you then got a lot of films about like The Hurt Locker and, Zero Dark 30 and films like that, where it was now, okay, now we can start looking at that time. And we can start making, art around that time and that kind of thing without it being, obviously during that time, you can't make that movie. You can't do this movie. Well, obviously they've done the stage show during that time, but you know what I mean? It's even more controversial than perhaps it would be. I think obviously the biggest difference is I feel like this is far more political. I feel like it's far more making a political point. And whilst I'm not saying that the stage show wasn't doing that, it just perhaps wasn't doing it to the same extent.
I don't know. I think what I've read online, I think like what it was, the difference in a way is like in the 60s it was saying join us, don't go to war, drop out. It was like the hippie movement is what you do. You need to open your mind, take these drugs. You need to get on board with this. Obviously, the war still happened, and then people, whatever happened, and, not everyone became hippies. And then that whole movement sort of ended in a way without necessarily completing that mission. And I think then, this has the sort of hindsight thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, I think at the end of Hair, the musical, it's more optimistic because no one has, you could probably look at it maybe as being like, we can make a change if you was in the 60s, but Hair the film, it just feels like the war. Do you think it maybe makes the films that it makes it seem like nothing could have changed what was going to happen?
Yeah, I wonder how much is because Claude goes to war in the stage show and he's making that choice, and whilst it's sad and it's tragic and obviously, it's still poignant. it's almost seen in more like of a noble sacrifice, like, oh, like, you know, he's sacrificed, you know, his freedom and everything for the good of everybody else. Whereas here it's almost saying, well, that actually isn't the point. The point is that people who don't really want to do it end up going because there's nothing, you know, going to war not because they want to fight for their country, but perhaps that because there's nothing else, or in this instance because he doesn't want his friend to go, so he's just in his place, and it's just damn bad luck, you know. So I think it's all obviously just slightly different messages naturally when you change the general gist of the story.
Yeah, and just the time gap, I think, just how people would have
you can probably
it.
you can look at it a bit more objectively and perhaps make more of a statement with it because you're not knee deep in it. You can be a bit more objective. You can perhaps criticize things when a little bit like the whole COVID thing, where when you're in the middle of lockdown, you're just probably listening to what people are saying because you're a bit scared and, you know, don't want to get COVID, don't want to die, and, you know, people are dying, it's fucking shit. And then when you come out of it, you go, well, was that the best thing?
Yeah.
You know, you're able to look at it a bit more because it's in the past and you know, you're not experiencing it every single day. And I think it's that kind of ability to do that, you know, in 79. So I think the Vietnam War ended in 75. So a few years after it's ended, it's a bit more in the past. Obviously, 10 years after 12 or so years after the musical's been up and running for, you know, a little while.
Yeah, I think that I would say that, you know, clearly the Hair, the musical stage show, is super politically motivated. You know, like it is, you know, especially to come out around that time and to have this sort of standpoint of like, you know, all this anti-war stuff and that. I feel like, what do you feel about the song "I Got Life"? You know, like it was sort of ruined a bit by, you know, it was always on an advert. You know, sometimes when things are on adverts, they can get a little bit.
It was weird. I was listening to that song and I couldn't work out if it was. Oh, is that from that? Isn't it a cereal advert?
Oh, I don't. It was on. It was on for years. I reckon.
Got my bread. Yeah, and it takes you back to like a mid 2000s ad for something. Is it a bank or something? I can't even remember what it was.
They had a lot of money because it was on all the time.
Was it Halifax?
Maybe.
It might have been Halifax with Howard. The Halifax man.
That would explain.
You know.
I'm over that now. For me, I just hear this version now. I'm totally past the advert phase of it. It took me a while at first. I was like, oh, this isn't the version I know.
I just spent the whole time going, it's either the same song or whoever wrote that song has nicked it from this, or this has nicked it from that song, because it was so similar and I couldn't actually work out. So I'm glad you did set out it's from that advert, because I'm like, that clarifies a few things.
I got life.
Yeah.
And I love this scene in general when, you know, he says, you know, do you mind, Sheila, if Claude here just sits here and like just looks at you for a bit before he goes off and serves his country? And then I love how long the conversation is between like her dad and him. It just keeps going and it feels like realistic. He's like, no, if you just let me finish. And he's like, okay, yeah, well, what I want to say is, he's like, no, if you just let me finish. And they just have this like really like sort of boring, like back and forth that feels like
a genuine conversation you probably would have.
Yeah.
I really liked the scene because it was like a very, because they do cause an awful lot of chaos, but it's all done in like a really sort of like positive way. You know, it's always, you know, essentially he's now dancing on a table, like obviously what I'm presuming would be quite expensive china and glass and crystal, and he's just kicking it off the table whilst dancing and singing, and, you know, starts swaying a massive chandelier. So there's quite a lot of chaos going on there, but it's so fun because he looks like he's just having an absolute whale of a time. And then the woman gets on the table with him and she's just like, what's going on?
She's enjoying it from the beginning, isn't she?
Yeah, she's like, actually, yeah, this is quite fun, actually. And I think it's another example of how obviously you've got the Claude character seeing these people and how different they are from him. And then it's like, even in the same city, you've got, particularly a city like New York, you've got these hippies, and then you've got these really sort of like uptight, stiff necked, sort of rich people who, everything's neatly placed, and they always look, really 100% really nicely clothed, and you get these, long-haired layabouts coming in with their open, shirts and their jewelry, and it's all a bit, it's a bit taboo, and it's just a really sort of just furthers that point of lots of different people coming together for a cause. Like the cause here, it's not. I don't think it's a case of they're really against war. I think it's more, let's just come together because we don't want to go to war. It's more, from a personal point of view, and it just happens to be that everybody feels the same.
I mean, they used to call up your, like, just a number. They'd have, like, numbers come up, wouldn't they? Like, a bit like Hunger Games, if you're called. Like, they'd have, like, this week, it's like, I don't know where I saw that in a movie, but it was like one of those sort of Vietnam-related movies, and someone's number gets called up, and they're like, oh, it's...
Yeah, conscription.
And it's absolutely... It's just it's crazy for me to think about. And I was going to ask you, actually, because you're not super into war stuff, really.
No, not really.
And you also don't like a certain style of dancing, like interpretive dance.
Yeah, I hate interpretive dance.
When this movie starts, because I would say that it sort of starts off a bit. I don't know if you've seen Godspell. I've only seen bits of it, but it has
I've heard of it.
Similar.
It's one that Hannah's mentioned an awful lot.
Godspell was the one written by the guy that made Wicked. I think it might have been his first one.
Okay, yeah. What's his name? Can't think of his name now.
Crazy piano guy.
Yeah,
he's pretty good, isn't he? I don't know about Godspell. It's I maybe I should give it a chance. But anyway, the film starts a bit like there's some interpretive dance. I think I remember, unless I'm getting it confused with this, but. The dancing and the horse scene at the beginning and stuff. I was like, I don't think Ryan's gonna like this, and then the fact that it's sort of war adjacent, like it's not a war movie. Let's be real, but it's war adjacent.
With war movies, it's more. I don't mind where war is a backdrop, but I don't really like war movies where it's you see the battles and you see that type of thing. That's not really my thing. That definitely comes from my dad because he's really into World War II, and so he's always putting war films on. So it's not so much a thing of like I don't like them because I think they're rubbish. It's more because I've grown up with every day a war film, black and white war films put on. So, but yeah, I mean, interpretive dance. Here's why I hate it. And the reason I don't hate it here, even though it's kind of interpretive, but not really.
It's done so well and it's all the same.
It's not so much the ability to do it. It's more when people say interpretive dance is a metaphor for something. And when they say, this means X, because it actually doesn't. Like, we went to, and it was, you saw it as well, I think, the Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah. I think we saw it at the Mayflower, and whilst what the dancers were doing were very good, it didn't mean anything other than what you choose to apply to it. I've always said to Hannah, and this is where we get into a heated debate because she likes it, whereby if you do a dance move, it doesn't mean anything until the audience has seen it. So if you say, let's take the YMCA dance, for example, just because it's a dance that everybody knows. Now, what is the meaning of the actual dance moves?
What's the letters?
The letters, right? Okay, because they look like the letters. Now let's try and say, that is showing the way in which counterculture was pressing up against the norm at the time because they're pushing out when they do the Y. That's what I hate about interpretive dance, because I
actually believe you on that.
I've just said that, and you can do that, and you can go, oh yeah, I've never thought of it like that, and that's the point, because you can literally do that with anything and say it means X when it really doesn't. It's just a dance move, and you've done it because it looks cool.
But then
if people who choreograph interpretive dance just say, oh, I've done that because it looks cool and I like how it looks, I'd be like, yeah, fair play, that's fine. But when they start going, I'm doing this to show the inner turmoil of the character, and I'm like, you're not though, are you?
what I love about the dancing in this is there's some dances that I think even I could do. You know, like there's like what one when it's we probably talk about it in a bit because I would like to talk about it for a longer period because my favourite, I think the most impressive scene. If the most impressive scene from that Mission Impossible movie, the most recent one, was the submarine, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, so the most impressive bit from this movie, the submarine of this, is just when he takes acid, and then Berger doesn't get any, and then has this whole trip, and it goes in the church, and they're flying.
Yeah, you got a pregnant flying lady.
I think that is some of the best like cinema ever, and it really takes you somewhere. I feel like the music at that point hits an all-time high, literally, and what? Oh, see, I've got lost because I'm imagining that scene. But the dancing, yeah, the dancing. But there's a bit where they're literally going. You can't obviously see it if you're listening, but it was like
a Egyptian-y type sort of
like
thing.
the classic
Yeah.
Egyptian-y thing. And then, it really is. See, maybe I don't really know what interpretive dancing is. What is it? Is it different to like just a normal dance routine?
Yeah, so interpretive dance is, I mean, I'm probably butchering, but my kind of, basically interpretive dance is what we saw in that Jesus Christ Superstar thing, whereby the movements aren't traditional movements, and it's not really.
It's a lot of hip thrusting in that. There was.
Sometimes there is. I'm going to Google what the definition of it is, because maybe I've only ever seen crap interpretive dance.
Where are you going to see crap?
Well, no, I done a theatre degree, so there was quite a lot of crap interpretive dance.
Whilst you're looking, Ryan, we're on the bit where the blonde dude, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but he does a great job in this movie as like a side character, and he's just about to sing the hair song, I think, and he's like, I'm just a hairy guy. And I can't quite remember how the hair song goes, but it will come to me in a minute. But it's sort of set in a prison, and yeah, so it's a good vibe. Right now, because I've only had a few watches of it, the songs that really do stand out for me are probably the obvious ones, like "This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius."
Yeah.
Manchester. I've got used to that first version of that because obviously at the end it's Manchester, England, cause the bit, the one where it's like more like a shot, Manchester, England, England, across the Atlantic Sea. So I didn't quite understand at the ending why he's singing Manchester, England, England. I didn't get it the first time I was watching. I was like, but that's where he like pretends where Claude is from at the beginning, because he hasn't really just got on a plane from England. He says, "Oh, he's just arrived from England on a boat."
Oh, okay.
And then he goes,
I must have missed that.
Manchester, England, England, across the Atlantic Sea, and Mr. Bukowski. And then at the end, he's singing that. And I believe in God. Have you found it, Ryan?
Yeah, so interpretive dance, this is according to Wikipedia, so do with that what you will. So interpretive dance is a family of modern dance styles that began in around 1900. It used classical concert music but marks a departure from traditional concert dance as a rebellion against the strict rules of classical ballet. It seeks to translate human emotions, conditions, situations or fantasies into movement and dramatic expression as opposed to following a specific dance style or telling a linear story. Yeah, I hate interpretive dance because the problem with it is that more often than not, the audience applies the meaning to it. And I think a lot of time it's an easy way out. It's an easy way of going, how do we tell that? We'll do it with interpretive dance, because interpretive dance can be anything because it's your interpretation. Again,
so anyone can do it then.
Yeah, it is, it's, I've always hated it because I find that movements don't tell stories. The audience applies the stories to the movements. So that's where I have a problem with interpretive dance.
And this film, it didn't give you any ick. You didn't get
no,
the ick
because it's not. I don't feel like the dance moves are trying to tell me anything.
They're kind of, to be fair, if you go to a festival where people are pretty psychedelic, people are dancing like that anyway.
And they're dancing like that just because that's how they feel and that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
And they're expressing themselves.
Yeah.
But they're not. They may be expressing how they feel, but it's not a case of saying, I'm doing this because I want to show you the conflict between these two characters. It just doesn't, does it? It's just you want to do a dance move that isn't a traditional dance move, and the way of having an out is to say it's interpretive dance.
Yeah,
because that's always, when I was doing my theatre degree, that is always what you used to say. It's like, oh, it's interpretive. If you weren't like sure why you were doing something, oh, it's like an interpretive thing. It's a bit of an out, because as soon as you say that, nobody can say, well, that's not true. That's not true, because it's your interpretation. And I suppose it's always been a bit of a cop out in some ways. Not that I'm saying to do those dance moves isn't difficult. It's just
you don't like how it's used.
It's used to tell stories, and I never get the story from what they're doing. I get the story from the person doing the dialogue over the top, or the facial expressions, because your facial expression is grimacing, or your facial expression is smiling. I'm not getting the dance moves because you've done a karate kick followed by something else. I don't get that story. And so that's where I feel like I'm making enemies out of a lot of musical theatre performers.
So. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's good when that bit comes.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare.
For all anyone knows, we could have been interpret dancing the whole time people have been listening. I guess you would have got a bit more wind noise with us holding the microphones, actually. He looked like John Lennon. There's a guy that has a hat that says LSD on it and face paint, and it's like a double take of John Lennon every time he's on the screen. Yeah, so I would like to talk about this scene, Ryan. I think, because you like lots of cool movies, obviously, and I think this scene is I think it's really cool. It's like it could be, like a cool scene in a horror movie. For me, this really sticks.
Yeah, I suppose it's that thing of, a lot of movies have that scene. If you talk about that movie, you've got to talk about that scene. This is that scene for this movie, isn't it? I mean, I'm a bit ashamed to admit this, but I don't know how, because it's not exactly subtle, but I somehow missed that they're all taking drugs here.
Okay.
So when he's looking off into the distance and seeing all of these visions, this was like the height of my, what the fuck is going on here, and then they say marijuana. I was like, oh, I've totally missed that. And of course, I say ashamed to admit that, because it's so obvious. I think perhaps I was looking at my phone during that exact moment and didn't quite get it.
Yeah, and it makes me laugh because Berger, basically a guy that looks like John Lennon has like, I don't quite know how they used to do it, but I think they had these things they dipped in acid, and that's
sugar cubes, aren't they?
Is that what it is?
Sugar cubes,
well,
yeah.
There you go, Ron. And then
you've never done that.
And then Berger has Berger. I just like the fact Berger doesn't get one. He goes off chasing him. I really like that little scene.
It's almost like I won't do it because I'll make sure everyone's all right.
Yeah, I think but doesn't he chase him? I think he runs off to go get some, but maybe
that's his way of not appearing he's not appearing like he's a bit of a stick in the mud. It's like, oh, he won't give me one, and actually what he's doing is, this guy's not done it before.
I think you're right.
I'll keep an eye on him.
That's the kind of guy Berger is. And Berger,
goes to war for Claude.
Yeah. We just found out as well that Berger has kind of a normal house, he's from I think it's quite important that it shows that his mum loves him. His dad's a bit stiff, but I think he supports him really. He's from a very normal family, and he's chosen this sort of hippie lifestyle. And I think what it reminded me of, actually, it reminded me a bit of John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever, his sort of home. It just seems kind of normalish. And
I mean, the thing I like about the fact that you find out Berger has his experience of being in this group and being with these hippies is a way of kind of like rebelling against normality and stuff. I like the fact that it wasn't like used as a plot device to be like, hey, you're a fraud, like you're not a real hippie, you come from money, you've got a nice house and all of this. I like the fact that that wasn't a plot point, because I felt like, oh, is this now going to be a plot point?
I thought something annoying was going to creep
but
in
actually
there.
it's just a nice scene because his dad's like, I'm not giving you any money until you go out and get a job. And then his mum's like, hey, in the kitchen. And he's like, how much you need? And it's like, oh, thanks, mum, And I think that, everybody probably has that kind of relationship with somebody where, with me, it was like, if my mum says no,
Yeah,
I
fair.
might be able to get it off my dad, Whereas if my dad said no, my mum's definitely not going to say yes, Or sometimes it'd be like, oh, my mum's saying no, but I'll go and ask Nan. That type of thing. So I quite like that. And yeah, I like the fact it wasn't used as a plot device for him. Like, oh, he's a fraud. He's not a real hippie. He's not really one of us type thing.
Yeah, I appreciate, because it is moments like that where something annoying can creep in. I don't think this movie really had any, and obviously we get some more backstory in a bit on the guy from the Warriors as well. But when they're in the church, like I really think they just casted this movie really well. Like, I really think like his expressions, and I'm not an actor, I don't know, but how he reacts to everything. And then like like the trip, sort of, he comes out of this high part of the trip, like when he's in the church and he's seeing like the snake woman turn, and she goes, will you take someone to be your wife? I do. I now pronounce you man and wife, whatever. It's really, and then they all float off. At one point, like you say, she's like flapping her arms, like she suddenly, they pronounce man and wife, she suddenly gets pregnant belly. She like is wheeled off to the side, and then yeah. Oh my god, Ryan!
She's just flying.
My favourite bit of this,
flying through the air.
Yeah, my favourite bit of this whole scene, Ryan, is Burgers dancing up. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
It's like Burgers in the room.
Yeah.
For people who are just listening, Simon is now up and dancing in the room.
Do you know what I mean? It's like Flight of the Conchords. It really cracked me up.
He has a real sort of like rhythm about him.
Yeah.
Like a little bit when he was doing the bit on the table as well. Like you could see that maybe he's not like a classically trained dancer or trained, but he's got rhythm.
Yeah.
And he's got, like if you go into like a club or into like, a gig or something, and there's that person who looks like the music is flowing through them.
Yeah.
Like it looks like they've been like taken over by the music. I get that a lot with Berger.
Yeah.
It looks like it's almost involuntary. Like he's not in control of what's happening. It's for, if you know what I mean.
No,
not in like a...
He is just vibe.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to tell you about this movie, actually, I think about it, is that all my life I've been into, the sort of music I like. I don't know if this resonates with you at all, but I really like Bruce Springsteen, and I always like, and I'm deeply into the Beatles, so I like songs that not necessarily tell a story. The Bruce ones sometimes do, but I like songs that go to A to B and they get there, and by the end of it you've got something from it. And I think the other way to go in life is more like Christina, my girlfriend, fiance. I think some people like the vibe of something more. Like people listen to dance music, or people that can just, Berger is a vibe person, and I think that the other dude, Claude, is a A to B person.
Yeah,
I've always been I really relate to Claude, because I've been in so many situations where I'm just looking at stuff going, everything is amazing. Like, how can someone dance like that? How can someone do that? Like, I see myself in him so much, actually, I realise. And I've met people like Berger. Do you know what I mean? We probably all have.
Yeah.
That he's this sort of, he is just vibe. Like, he likes the Rolling Stones. He doesn't like the Beatles as much, because he just likes to dance and boogie, and like he likes the sound of it. And I think like I think they've cast them so well that they've got A to B. And
I know what you mean, because it's weird, because Treat Williams, who plays Berger, prior to this, because when you said about, shall we do hair? I was like, oh, that's interesting, because Hannah's always liked that musical. I've never seen it. I was surprised that Treat Williams is in it, because he was like a B-movie action star from like the late 80s and 90s. So like, do you remember the film The Substitute with Tom Berenger?
Oh, I don't know.
Basically about a army guy who goes to a school and becomes a substitute teacher to try and flush out like underground drugs in the
I've not seen
school.
it.
Yeah. Well, Tom Berenger was like he was like a rung below Arnie and Sylvester Stallone in the
Okay.
80s. So he was like a B-list movie star. Well, Treat Williams, there's like 5 substitute movies called The Substitute Teacher, or it's called The Substitute, sorry. He was in 4 of them. So he took over from the B-list movie star. So he was like a C-list movie star. And he's in a film called Deep Rising, which is a slightly campy 90s sci-fi horror film. And it's like, every time I see him, it's like, oh, you're usually in bad action movies. So to see him in something where he's not like eye roll, oh God, action movie, it's like, oh, because is that what it's going to be like? And it's like, oh no, you are actually quite talented. You just seems like you've been cast in all the wrong things from what I've seen you in.
Yeah.
So I was quite surprised. And, you know, first of all, you can't really not mention the hair. It's called Hair. And that is a Barnet, you know, that is you know, if it's like, you know, how I always thought like Mel Gibson's hair in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, you're right.
Or,
very Mel Gibson, actually.
You know, like in the 80s, you had Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon. In the 90s, it was like Brandon Lee in The Crow, where people have like iconic haircuts from that time. And this is like the 70s haircut, the bit Jim Morrison, you know, the Doors vibe. I mean, he essentially looks like he could be in the Doors.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably where a lot of the influences came from, to be fair. But he's just very charismatic, and it's weird because I've only ever seen him in stuff where he's trying to be charismatic and it never quite comes off. And yet he's arguably the best thing about it, this film. He's arguably the one who you kind of sticks with you the most, because he seems like the most fun and the most sort of carefree, and, you know, he's kind of everything Claude wants to be but can't quite be.
Do you think as well that they do have flaws in the characters, don't they? Like Treat
Williams,
Burger, he trying to think of where they show he's a bit much sometimes. When he steals their clothes, I think they're actually a bit upset about that.
Yeah. It's a bit sort of full on, isn't it?
If there's a naked scene that didn't need to happen in the musical, then I feel like they definitely got their money's worth out of the National Lampoon lady. Is that what she was in?
Is that Sheila by any chance?
Yeah.
Let me just have a look. I think she was.
I feel like there's definitely in this movie they've managed to get their nakedness in their own way. It kind of makes sense for the movie, but it's also very like of the time. It's like there's some nudity in this bit coming up, sort of vibe. And but I mean, I don't feel like we lost anything by not seeing everyone naked in a weird sort of end of first act.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing I sort of took away from the differences when Hannah was explaining. I was like, that literally makes no sense. It's like, literally, it just sounds like they were like, right, okay, we need something to get people through the door, something to help people go, should we go and see that show?
I think
in the 60s, it's like, oh, everybody gets naked at the end of Act 1, right, that's why you go and buy the ticket. Whereas here, obviously, they don't all get naked, but this is as close to probably as you get. And I know what you mean. Burger is that point where it's like, oh, he's gone a little bit too far. And there's that probably like a question of going, well, has he gone too far, or is just Claude and Sheila so much of stick in the mud that they're like, they can't see the fun, hilarious side? And I think it's a good scene for showing how different they are from the rest of the group.
There's also a whole it's not really spoken about, is it? And I've not really thought about it really, because I'm more just into the songs and the vibe these days. But the thing that Sheila and Claude obviously likes Burger. No, Claude obviously likes Sheila, and Burger takes Claude to their house and dance on the table, and he's trying to get him to spend time with her. And at the end, he even makes a sort of sacrifice to switcheroo, so he sees her. But there's this. He's always trying it on with Sheila too.
Yeah,
Like, he's always got a hand sort of going up her leg and stuff in the
yeah.
car.
I feel like he's that friend who you wouldn't let him around your girlfriend or your wife because you just know where he's going to try it on, then, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's probably going to be
And
successful.
yeah, it's that thing of he obviously clearly doesn't quite understand boundaries, and obviously that's one of his flaws. And I think there's probably the character I do like, which is played by Jeannie Ryan, is Annie Golden. Sorry, played by Annie Golden is Jeannie.
Yeah.
Who seems like the most sort of like sweet and sort of like just genuinely nice person. Not that anybody here is horrible, but there's questionable traits about her, where she's like the only one who's like really just sweet. And there's a bit where Claude goes off and he writes to Sheila, and Sheila's like, should I write him back? And she's like, oh yeah, do that. Say I say hi. It's just like a really sweet sort of like slightly ditzy sort of just quite nice moment where you see that she is actually quite innocent and quite obviously innocent in the sense of she doesn't seem to have a bad bone in her body. Not innocent in the sense of she's never done drugs, because she clearly has.
She also she says to Claude, maybe in that scene just before the drug scene, maybe she says, "Would you like to?" She says, "Should we get married or something?" to Claude. So he doesn't have to go into if you have a child.
I wonder how much
married.
is because she secretly has a bit of a thing for Claude.
Yeah, or
she's just genuinely like, I'll sacrifice it, get married to me, that's fine, sort of thing. Because then she ends up pregnant with Lafayette's baby, doesn't she?
Whose babies does it turn out being?
I thought, well, that's what
I can't remember.
I think it's Lafayette's.
Okay.
Because there's the bit where his other family, where it's like, he's got a wife and a child. She's like, is that your baby as well?
I think that part, we're not quite on it on the film in the background, but he really has a bit of a, they show his flaws, and in it they show the flaws of the sort of hippie movement, in the sense that, you're all nice to your hippie friends, but this is what your actual real life is like.
It's almost the thing of like, you're carefree and nothing can tie me down, but that has quite severe real life consequences. Like, you're so carefree that you're leaving your wife and child presumably alone for long periods of time, and doesn't seem like any of them have jobs. So if you are providing for them, how are you providing that money? Is it questionable means? All of these types of things where you really sort of see, the flaws in that movement, and flaws in particularly Lafayette, where he's just like, I'm not Lafayette anymore.
Yeah. It also makes you think, like, because you always, if you put up a post about some political issue you really believe in, you can easily, someone would be like, well, or you go to a protest about climate change, and then you don't get your recycling right at home. Like, there's always something, isn't there? And it feels like, it's a real thing with like activism. It's like, because there are flaws in everyone. So even people that are activists and, and doing the good things in the world, they still might take a car to go to a climate protest.
Yeah, it's almost like the thing at the moment where obviously the big thing in terms of like vehicles is like moving to electric cars, and it's like, okay, well, we're moving away from fossil fuels. It's like, but how much damage does it do to the earth to make the lithium batteries and to ship them and to do them in the quantities? Is that just as bad as the fossil fuels, but it seems better? So it's almost like the end consumer feels better about what they're doing, but actually, if you look into it a bit more, is it actually helping? That kind of thing, isn't it? Where people will only, other than what I would call real hardened activists, people will only kind of fight for a cause up until a point where it suits them, if that makes sense.
I feel like as well, it's good it's clever, this musical and movie, to have this scene in it of them calling each other out a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a difference in the musical. I actually happen to know that I don't think, or actually maybe I'm wrong. I thought in the musical she's actually not, I think it's someone in the gang calling each other out, maybe. I might be wrong, actually. Maybe it's the same thing, but that's what I thought. It's quite a good scene in the city, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is where they all get naked in the musical. So during this song is when they all get naked. Here, what they have, they have a big crowded, busy street where everybody walking in one direction, and then they turn, and then they all start to crouch as Claude walks through them, which I think is visually quite an image. Again, you think you can apply meaning to it, but I think it was, what I like about this film is I feel like a lot of it was just done just because it looked cool. And it just happens to, perhaps, like what I was saying with interpretive dance, where audiences and people watching it will apply meaning, because there's a lot of stuff in there where I was like, that just looks pretty cool. Like,
I totally get you on that. I honestly, it feels like he just knew, between the choreographer and the person doing all the dancing and the staging of it, they really, I think they nailed, like, like even in like the new Wicked, I feel like I spoke about Jeff Goldblum and stuff last week, last time we did.
It's really sticking with you, isn't it, that film?
But like there were just slightly naff bits in it. Like the bit where I like that song, Dancing Through Life. There's some awkward moments in that set piece of the wheels. There's just some awkward moments that are a little bit boring. And this film, it doesn't, I don't think there's any, maybe towards the beginning when you don't know what's happening, but then on the rewatch, those scenes where there's like horses dance, they're actually kind of impressive. It's like, how do you get the horses?
And that's what I mean. It's a fine line, isn't it, between, because this obviously is a political movie. It obviously does have a message, and I think things have been done just to look cool or just because it looks great on screen. What I like is that it balances it quite well. At no point do I feel like I'm being preached at, because I feel like as soon as you do that, your message is lost. Because particularly, it's a British thing where if you try and tell somebody what to do or how to feel, it's like, no, I'm fucking doing that. Why? Because you've told me to. I don't want to do it now. And in films, it's very much like that. It doesn't do that. And at no point does it look like they've done something just to be cool, and it actually is at the detriment of other stuff because it looks ridiculous or because it's so out of place. A lot of superhero movies do that at the moment, where it's like, oh, why don't we just do this because it's cool to see, like I went to see Superman the other day, the new Superman, and there's a scene where he saves a squirrel.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, Superman probably would save a squirrel.
I don't think they have enough time.
But like, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, in terms of the logical kind of element,
got enough time for a
essentially, there's this big monster, and it's about to be this squirrel is about to be crushed by this big monster, and he goes and saves this squirrel from being squashed. And whilst, quite nice, I don't want to see a squirrel die, but at the same time, it's like there's quite a lot of other shit going on. Like, there's probably people who are going to die. There's certainly a lot of building damage that is causing an awful lot of hazard to other people, but let's see Superman save a squirrel. It felt a little bit like, why have you just done that? What is the point in doing that? Here, it balances it quite well, where things look great and will probably use just to look great, i.e. when they pick up the small I was about to call him the small private, which is the scene where they're naked in front of the front of the army general. So bad pun there. But when they pick him up and they take his socks off, the way they pick him up, where he's obviously got his hands over his privates, and they just pick him up and take his socks off. It's done in a way which looks quite visually funny. And I feel like that wasn't done for a hidden meaning. It's done because it looks.
Do you think the Superman thing is a hidden meaning of like
no,
animals?
But it's the other end of the spectrum, where it's like it's doing something just to be like cool, or to be, let's see Superman save a squirrel.
Oh, but it's not. It doesn't actually not actually that
But
cool. It's failing at the coolness.
it's failing because
Yeah.
it's now got to the eye roll moment.
Yeah, and
You know.
when they do that, it's not just a silly thing. It's like I think it's something to do with. I don't know this, but I don't know if they wanted gay people in the army or not. And I think it was a thing that people would paint their like fingernails or toenails to try and say they're gay. And I don't know if they would take you. I don't know that would. I don't, because earlier we were saying, oh, they take everyone. I actually don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
I don't think that is the case. I think it's more that's kind of what I got from it in this film. It felt very much like the person holding the gun at the enemy is interchangeable. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, great.
What background you have, what race you are, what sexuality you are, who you identify as, because the result is the same. I think that's kind of what I got from it. I think there's an element probably where you're watching a film and you're going, right, what are we going to talk about? Because we're going to do a podcast on it. Whereas if you were just watching this for fun, you probably maybe not get that. So I was perhaps looking and reaching a little bit, but I feel it holds up a little bit. And I like the contrast between seeing the three women sing and then seeing the men sing. And it's done in a really sort of light-hearted kind of way where it's quite funny and it's quite light.
It's kind of like not super like, like there was just some choreography there of like them like shuffling around under the table, and it wasn't all like lining up like it would do in like
it's rough around the edges, and it's not, and that I think is kind of the point you were trying to make with like modern musicals, where everything is crisp, everything is to the letter and to the, a bit, almost a little bit like the scene from Whiplash, where it's like, it's good, but it's not quite my time. Are you dragging or are you rushing? That scene from Whiplash.
I've not seen it. Right.
Oh, but do you know the scene that I'm talking about?
I've put it off because I need to come round. It's one of those ones.
Essentially, there's a scene where the conductor of the band is like super to the point of like, he's actually just an arsehole with it, whereby the timing to my ear sounds exactly the same each time, but to his ear, he's either dragging or he's rushing.
Is it J. Jonah Jameson?
Yeah. I like the way that's how you refer to him, because that he is that guy.
Yeah,
isn't he?
He is that guy.
And now his actual name is just completely gone out of my head.
So he's
great, but and his thing in that is, it's not quite my time.
Okay.
And he makes out like it's not a problem, but it clearly is a problem. And I feel like, not that I'm saying that's what it's like in musical theatre, but everything is very much, it's got to sound a certain way. It's got to be absolutely perfect. Like I remember having a conversation with Hannah about something once. I think it might have been like Phantom or whatever it was. And it was in the point where I think she was getting annoyed at me because I was like, quite passionate about what I believed in this instance. And I was like, the problem is that everybody has to sound amazing when they're singing. And actually, when you have these big emotional moments, you're not going to sound amazing. I said, I'd much rather have Johnny Vegas sing. And I used him because it was the person who I thought, who probably doesn't look like they can sing the most. Not because Johnny Vegas is a great singer or anything.
He might be quite good.
I'd much rather see him sing something and it sound awful, but the emotion comes through, than see somebody who can sing amazingly, but none of the emotion's there. And that's kind of the point I make. And even like this song as well, I think is like it's quite intimidating moment. I realise I've just pointed at the screen and our listeners won't know what we're talking about. So it's basically the montage of where Claude is training in the army, and every now and again you get the Vietnamese girl sliding across the screen singing the song, and I can't remember what song it is.
No, same.
Walking in Space, sorry.
Okay.
And it's like a real sort of like completely out of place. And it's like, what the hell is all of this? Like, because you never see this Vietnamese girl again, but it resonates quite a lot, and it sticks with you quite a bit. It feels very sort of like intrusive, and it's a very sort of, innovative way of filmmaking for a musical.
I think to have just young girl on screen with a black background, and then it cuts to like tanks and weapons and where all these men are going. And obviously, we know lots of in war, kids get killed. Obviously, it is. It is crazy. I know. I know I'm going to sound like one of those people now, Ryan. I know I've been to Vietnam, but I've been to Vietnam.
Have you been to Vietnam? I didn't know you'd been to Vietnam.
I thought you were serious.
Sorry, that's just something we always do. Like, I think my mum and dad, when they retired, would say, "Well, now we're retired." They would say that phrase a lot. So we would always go, "You retired? I didn't know that." So yeah.
So I have a somewhat of an insight into something, at least the landscape and the people now. But we went there for a quick story. Christina had that travel bug, right? That you get, you want to get out of this town, you want to go to Asia. Why do we have that thing? We just have that thing. Some people have it. And I sort of tagged along, and we went there, and then, we thought, oh, we're going to go traveling. We go from this place to this place to this place. Anyway, when you do that, what you realize afterwards, what I realized is that you're just a tourist, really. And you can't really find out anything about a country from a month in it, and that you just feel like you learn more about yourself in a way, because you're like, I really need to come home, or you learn like, oh, I'm actually not very good in the heat, or like, oh, I'm quite good at tasting new things. You learn these things, but you don't necessarily learn about, oh, I want to know what the Vietnamese people like. You don't speak Vietnamese, and it's like it's this thing of like, what the Vietnam War really, all of these war stories. I think, Ryan, because we're in a time where we're lucky enough to be in a country, or at the moment, where we haven't been conscripted into something, and we would have had to have done that by now. And so, and I just really feel for the people of the past that have to go to these things, and it really gets me to us, because even like in Vietnam now, you land there or whatever, and it's great or whatever, but the difference in like temperature for like, I guess in America's pretty hot somewhere, but not New York. And, like what it would have been like when they got there, of just in terms of the heat and that. And, and that's where they're going. And it's like, they don't belong there. Certainly, those tanks certainly don't belong. I did go actually to Vietnam, where all of the tanks rolled up on the beach in this Da Nang place. And it's just, to me, it's so crazy to imagine, like, just the scale of it, how many helicopters, things they see, how many things are over there.
Yeah, and it's weird, because it was a long time ago, but it also wasn't a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing where you go, even World War II was a long time ago, but isn't a long time ago at the same time. It's like, it's almost the thing of the change from, the 40s to the 70s is massive, and then the change from the 70s to now is massive, but the change from like 20 years ago to now isn't as big. But in 50 years time, we were looking at it and go, oh, that change was massive. And it's just such a weird thought process, because my grandfather fought in World War II, and actually that's how he met my nan. So without my grandfather, being posted in South Africa, I wouldn't be here. And it's
wow.
It's it's a weird sort of like thing of going, oh fuck yeah, like without that big horrible war thing, I wouldn't be here, or I definitely wouldn't be here.
I think as well, for me, the Vietnam War, I think, and a part of the reason I was sort of happy to go there with Christina and join her on her sort of travel-y trip, or our trip together, is that with cinema coming from Hollywood, primarily when we were, growing up, and still now, there's so many Vietnam films, and the big ones like Forrest Gump goes to Vietnam. Robin Williams has been to Vietnam. All of the famous Hollywood actors have been to Vietnam in a film, or the men ones. And it's you see it so much. And I think that, but it's important in a way, and I think that I think music can. A lot of those Vietnam films, obviously, are some of the, they obviously, loads of them did really well, didn't they? Like Apocalypse Now, like people like, I think
Which came out the same year as this.
Was the Thin Red Line Vietnam? No.
Thin Red Line, yeah.
Is that a Vietnam one?
I think so.
What's the other one? Actually, is Thin Red Line?
Full Metal Jacket.
Okay, yeah.
I believe that's Vietnam.
Rambo to some
Yeah.
extent. He's like a vet, and it's like it's recent in a way that it's made it onto all our screens in these quite amazing movies. But I think this is,
And also, we're quite detached from it in
yeah,
this country. In America, obviously, it's far more. It's far more relevant and close to home in most ways, it's particularly around this sort of time frame where a movie comes out about Vietnam, and either you're married to somebody who went to Vietnam, you went to Vietnam, you lost somebody in Vietnam. It's like a war film. I say a war film. I mean a world war. I say war film. I mean World War Two when I say war film. It's like it's like watching a World War Two film in like the 50s.
yeah, that's
And
great.
I suppose the difference in the 50s in terms of their war films, it was more, because of, how can I put
More
this?
like pride in
It was
going
more.
to war.
It was probably more the thing of, because everybody was so affected by the World War, and so many more people died, and so many more. It was such on a bigger scale. I think they made the movies to sort of like make themselves feel better. So
Mm.
like it was often a time of like, oh, look how great we done, Whereas I feel like at this time in America, a lot of the films that were coming out were criticizing the war,
Well,
and
also,
criticizing the viewpoint, and criticizing or at least questioning it.
yeah.
I don't particularly know of any Vietnam movies that came out that were like, "Well, hey, Vietnam, man!" And if it is, it's done in kind of like a satirical kind of way. So
I think oh, I forgot what I was going to say then. I think that. Oh, sorry, Ryan. I've literally lost my train of thought.
it's because the distraction on the screen
Yeah.
is just too much to. I mean,
Damn.
we've just gone past that amazing solo from Lafayette.
Yeah, that's insane.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's something to be said about just having a close up of a character. Strangely, I've just come off doing an episode with Gaz on The Silence of the Lambs, which does the same thing, but obviously in a very different way.
Like a
But
monologue.
like, yeah, and just having an extreme close up of somebody's face as they're, well, even if they're doing nothing, like obviously in Hannibal Lecter, it's like really fucking scary. Whereas here, it's like really emotional, and you literally feel every single, syllable that she says and she sings. You feel that emotion coming through the screen because of the way it's shot. And I think a lot of the time, particularly with modern movie musicals, I'm thinking of things like Cats, Wicked, and
I've not seen the Cats one, but I've seen roundups of it,
yeah,
and I know the issues with it.
I think a lot of it is more about making money. Unfortunately, it seems like that's the way Hollywood in a big way is going. But shooting a musical should have the same kind of approach to staging a musical, and go, okay, well, why are we going to do this here? Why are we going to do that there? What is the reason for having this happen like this? When you would approach staging or blocking a musical or any kind of play, you want things to look a certain way for a certain reason. And I feel like the modern movie musicals, it's more just about, let's just make it bigger and grander and do stuff with special effects and
And get some celebrity cap. You know what I like right about this actually, and I don't actually know if Claude the actor is really the most musical guy ever. I'm not sure, but in a lot of more modern ones, you get like people who are good actors, but they've taken a hit on the singing. I think it happened famously actually it's in that really old movie. I watched it actually. Was Hannah in it? The roll of the dice, the roll of the
Oh,
dice
Guys and
one.
Dolls.
Yeah, in the movie version, they cast the Godfather dude to sing, and he weren't.
Oh, what, Marlon Brando?
Yeah, and he ain't the best at singing. And
Yeah.
I
Well, it's a
think,
bit like Les Mis with Russell Crowe.
yeah, and that I can't watch Les Mis with the music. Like I just can't. I can't watch it.
I think probably the difficulty that a lot of people find is because the whole thing is sung.
I like opera. I like
Oh,
an
okay,
opera.
maybe not
It's
then. I mean, Russell Crowe in it is a bit.
There's like a weird auto tune going on. They like recorded it on screen, like
Yeah.
it's which they've actually did wicked. They recorded some of it live, and I actually think terrible idea, because I think it might add something to some performances, but just sing it in the studio. Do you know what I mean? Just and then you can actually, and then you'll get like a good. I've already gone on about this basically, and but you know what I mean. It's like, yeah, I think. That it doesn't feel like you get to a cameo actor who's just singing it because they're like. I think the cameos in this are from actual singers. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they're
yeah. I think that's kind of the point I was making, where things are done for effect. So, like Les Mis has Russell Crowe, Cats. Oh, let's put James Corden in it because it's James Corden. All of those things where it's like, I mean, that does happen in, you know, musicals on stage. You know, you have something called stunt casting, where they put, you know, a more well-known person in a role to get boost ticket sales. So it does happen, but generally speaking, that's always kind of, well, not always, but a lot of the time, it's kind of frowned upon and seen just for that. Oh, that's clearly a stunt casting, rather than it actually being, you know, something that's, you know, oh, that's done because they're really right for the part.
Yeah.
You know. So, and this doesn't feel like that in the slightest. And perhaps part of that is because I don't really know the people, and I don't really know,
true.
you know, a lot of this is new to me, but it feels like everybody earned their place. Everybody kind of is there for the reason, for the right reasons, you know. You know, nobody's bumming the director, nobody's, you know, paid anybody off, nobody's got somebody's sister's aunt's first nephews in here. You know, it feels like everybody who's here has earned their spot, and they've, you know, really sort of, you know, bring something to the final product.
Here is something, Ryan, that I want to talk to you about. So this is like quite a bit like Inception in a way for us, because there's a cut to the future, isn't there, where this song comes on through the speakers in a very psychedelic way. It comes through the speakers in the military training ground, and they're all standing there, and this music comes on talking about how many Viet Cong were captured, how many Americans died, and stuff like that. And they're standing in front of the war memorial in America, the big white pointy one, and they are doing an interpretive dance for a crowd. The interpretive dance is clearly to show mourning and sadness, you know, to put my meaning onto it. But do you like it because it's an interpretive dance to a crowd that we're watching in the context of like a movie?
So
it's like a scene within a scene.
What told you that that's what they were mourning?
Well, they were singing it.
So the dance moves weren't telling you that then?
Yeah, but I still like the dance.
But the dance moves weren't telling you that they're mourning.
No, yeah, you're right.
Which is the whole point.
Yeah.
You're getting the message from the singing. You're getting the message from the facial expressions potentially, and from the costumes they're wearing. You're not getting any of the meaning from what they're actually doing.
But if they
because it's just done and it looks a bit odd and it's a bit
if
cool.
If they weren't dancing, it wouldn't look as good.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean that's what I mean. It's a case of. It kind of works here because it's kind of, we're not watching people do interpretive dance and being asked to interpret what they're doing. We're watching people watching an interpretive dance.
Like Gogglebox.
Yeah, it's like Inception, isn't it? Yeah.
We're watching people watching interpretive dance, all right? And they're taking what they want from it, and then we're understanding what they're understanding because of how they're... But it's a cool scene.
It is a cool scene.
To randomly cut forward to the future in a film that has no sort of time travel it. Do you know what I mean? Have like a...
It was another moment where you just go, are they going to do anything else which is a bit weird? And they do, and it fully commits to it. It fully just goes, yeah, we're going to do that. We're not going to shy away. We're just going to do it, okay? And you're going to like it. That's how it kind of feels. And like the fact that it then isn't, they don't go back to it at any point. It's not like a thing that gets referenced later on, or it comes back and you see like, oh, it's now, but it's changed. It's not that. It's just it's just going to be there. It's just going to happen, and to do with that or what you will.
I find that because I actually thought the bit with the Vietnamese girl was the same bit as that, but it's not. It actually comes a bit later.
Yeah,
it's like another sort of You know, and
Well, I think it's that whole thing of like that's like the elephant in the room. So it's the thing of like they're all training and they're all doing all of this stuff and they're all training for something, and it's like it's always there, but it's never really like well, it is addressed, but like it's this thing over in the background of oh yeah, you're gonna actually have to do that. You're gonna actually have to do everything you're learning now. You're now going to have to actually do it, but it's not going to be done with a dummy. It's going to be done with an actual person,
yeah,
and you're going to have to do this. And it's not going to be done in a in a training thing. You're going to be in the middle of the jungle, and everything in that jungle is going to be difficult. It's just such it's a way of kind of pulling them out of the moment and saying there's this big thing over here that nobody's really talking about.
and
We're focusing on training because if we don't focus on training, we'll be sitting in our bunks thinking about the fact that we're going to have to go and do these horrible things.
it's a scene that they would never have put in if, I don't think, obviously, if it came out a year after it was made, after the music. If they did it 10 years earlier when the musical came out and he did it originally, I don't think they would have had the future scene in there of them looking back on what happened. And I think,
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there's an element of because they know what happened, they
yeah,
can say what actually happened. They may have done it in the sense of, oh, here's what we think might happen,
yeah,
obviously. But I think, yeah, it's that thing. That's what I was saying earlier about that retrospectiveness of it all, where because they're no longer in the war, because they're no longer, people are still having the effects of the war and people are still suffering from it, but nobody's, physically nobody is actually at war anymore. You can then take a step back and go, was that the right thing what we done as a country? Was that the right thing? Did we need to do that? Was that right? Did that actually save us? Were we actually at threat? What's this going on here? You can be a bit more objective about it. And I think obviously that is like a literal moment of that happening where they're looking back at what's actually happened and the effects of it whilst it's kind of going on training for it.
I think I was going to say that as well. Like after World War II, a lot of the films can generally have a kind of happy ending because they won the war. Like they won. Whereas like Vietnam, they didn't win. And in Vietnam, you go into like a museum there, and there's like stuff of the, there's just there's there's old like cigarette cases and stuff of the American soldiers that obviously died. It's like it's like movies about a war that you lost. Like I don't know how many German movies there are from the perspective
Mm.
of Germans losing. But
Yeah.
it's a totally
And-
different thing
and
to lose something.
Yeah, and
to
I think as well there was probably an element after World War II where it had a happy ending because for a lot of people it didn't. So
yeah,
it was like, well, if we put a sad ending, isn't it just driving home what actually happened? And people weren't ready for it to be driven home. People weren't ready to look back and question what happened. They just want to forget about it. And
but we won
actually, we're making these movies about it, but they're ending in a positive way. They're ending in a happy way where we're now actually okay. But now we can almost think that maybe that is what happened and everything was all happy. Obviously the Allied forces won the war, but for a lot of people, it wasn't like a case of, oh, we've won, woohoo. It's more a thing of like, oh, we've won, what now?
yeah,
Now I've got to live with and the same thing with the people in Vietnam. Oh, okay, America didn't win the war, so that's probably why there's a lot of more, this is probably the equivalent of Germany making a film or Italy making a film about World War II. They're able to look at it and go, well, why didn't we win the war? And that, in this case, it's saying, well, the war was kind of flawed to begin with. Why did we go there?
yeah.
What was the point of it? That kind of thing.
What do you think about this dude that gets sort of duped? Because she sort of does the bar that Sheila goes to is very outside of the military base. Sheila sort of chats up a guy at the bar, an officer, to get the uniform from him. And then I felt kind of bad for this bloke because they leave him in the middle of what looks like a really hot desert, and it looks like it's a really long walk. And I'm not even not convinced he'd make it out of this.
Well, it's certainly a thing where you go, that would definitely be like a side quest or a subplot point of a TV show where we go, whatever happened to him?
Yeah. Oh, if this was a TV series, there'd be a whole episode.
Yeah, it would be that episode where, oh, we haven't got the main actors, we haven't got the main characters because they're off doing another something else. We've only got this one guy. It's like the bug episode from the Fly episode from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
That would be him getting out of the desert. Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's the whole thing of, in a very superficial way, for me, it poses the question of a means to an end. So you're doing this thing to find your friend and to mean that you can see your friend and see your loved one and all of that, but at what cost? A bit like people, the government was saying, we're going to go to Vietnam and we're going to win the war. Why? At what cost? What are we sacrificing at the same time to do so? They're doing essentially something quite horrible to that guy for no reason other than, he's got the right uniform.
Yeah.
He's
those damn hippies.
His career is definitely going to be very different, because it'd be like you were duped by a woman in a bar. Okay, well, you're not a general anymore.
I think as long as he got back, I reckon, he'll walk back the other way and go back to the pub.
Yeah, and be like, hey, can I use your phone?
But he obviously doesn't get back anytime soon, because otherwise he'd say his officer uniform was. Also, how, what, it got to about this point, to be honest, right, where I was really invested. On the first watch of it was all very overwhelming, like I said, but about around here, I think I started to see where it was going, and I kind of ruined this for myself before, because I'd seen the clip of him marching into the chopper. That was a long time ago I'd seen that, so I always knew that he was going, and I remember his face quite clearly. But it was around this point, obviously at that point I get what was about to happen, and it all started falling into place. And then it was like, this musical and film being called Hair is really important, actually. And all of the sort of mystery surrounding it from that record store when I was in there, or the charity shop, about, hair, that's a load of hippies dancing. They don't look much different from me, to be honest. I was like, but my sort of naked people dancing in a musical theatre thing. I was like, classic, But it all started to line up a bit more, and I see the importance of why I have long hair. It's because I don't really want to conform.
It's like the ultimate sort of fuck you, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like, fuck you, I'll do what I want. I'll grow my hair long. It's a form of self-expression, which going, not to harbour a point and hammer a point home, but what I was saying earlier about, these people who fought these wars from the point of view of, the government, and from maybe not the government, but from a war kind of viewpoint, these people are interchangeable. Why do they shave everybody's head when they go into the army? Why do they do that? Oh, so everybody looks the same. So nobody's better or worse than other. Also, because it means that people are less individual, meaning that if you're going to lose people in battle, then maybe it's easier to lose them, because you don't go, I really remember him. He was a really great guy, not because he had long hair, but because of the way he expressed himself, and because of the way, he was. And, do you know what I mean? It's that whole thing of,
you can just say, he died heroically.
You become a number. You become, another,
And it's almost like the smoking gun, isn't it? Like, the moment he cuts his hair, that is the thing that separates him, is the moment he messes up. His part of me thinks
the thing that would have saved him was his hair.
Yeah, he would have been kicked off the ground. So
exactly.
Would have sent him.
He'd have been like, "Who the fuck are you? You're not. What? You obviously haven't been in this battalion or been in this place because you've got long hair." He
really rocks the soldier look, though, with the aviators.
He does. It's a little bit Top Gun-esque, isn't it?
And the bar's very Top Gun. I think I might just said that, but sorry if I did. But did I say that? The bar was Top Gun.
I don't remember you saying it, so either that means you didn't say it or I wasn't listening.
Oh no, I think.
I don't think you said it.
The bar was very Top Gun bar.
It's
just a bit of a drive out of the a perimeter of the fence, and it's sort of joy. It's at this point for me, it's downhill from here, because Well, maybe it wasn't for you because you probably didn't know the twist, I guess, because I ruined the twist for me. So what was you thinking at this point
So
when
at this
he's
point,
gone into the base?
I was, I thought Claude was going to go, and they were all going to lose Claude, and it would be a really sort of like, oh no, we've just lost our friend. And I thought that was going to be the moment, and it kind of it surprised me a little bit. Like it was, admittedly, a lot of this film I was kind of half watching on my phone because I think it was, as you say, very overwhelming. And I think there was points where I was like, I don't really know what's going
No,
on,
I honestly,
and
I
so it
understand.
was difficult for me to kind of stay. And it's not because of the fault of the film. I think it's because it's one of those films where a second viewing is much better.
Yeah,
And
even
the
more.
more you know the songs, the better, that type of thing. And so I thought, okay, I know it's going. And then as soon as that point hit, where the other, like, I'm presuming general, sergeant, whoever comes in and says, right, okay, guys, we gotta go. And it's like you see that look of it, like, oh fuck, like, where's Claude? And you start to see that realization that if Claude isn't back soon, I'm fucked. And then obviously when he's marching onto the plane and he's going Manchester, England,
Yeah.
England, it's like, and he starts saying I'm Claude and things like that. It's like,
I believe in God.
oh shit, man. Like, and then it just does that, like, really sort of like cold cut to, you know, all the gravestones of the people who have died in battle and died in war. And then you see the one with Berger and it's like, oh shit. And it's like, obviously it's sad somebody dying in war anyway, but in this case it was just even more poignant because he didn't choose to be there. And it wasn't a case of he didn't choose to be there but his number got called up. He didn't choose to, or sorry, he did choose to be there but not to go to war. It was just so his mate could go and see his like girlfriend
I,
and see his friends before he went to war, and timing got in the way and it was out of his
yeah.
control.
I get the impression though. I mean, so when the sergeant sort of starts calling them all up to go to war, and it's the first time I think there's one other time actually when you see Berger looking a bit out of his depth, and it's when they're about to get sentenced, and he looks a bit out of his depth, and they're like, I don't trust you with my money because he's got 50 quid from his dad. And he goes, no, I can get more. I know people. And then he goes to his mum, and I think that's a really good bit. But in any case, you see him at that point. It's
you see the cracks start to appear.
I think so that he and it's when I just realised it's whenever he's around an institution is when the cracks appear. And the moment he goes into the military base, he hasn't got the power to dance on the table.
He's still trying to do the bravado thing, which works in the outside world, but obviously in a place like the army where there's always somebody with a bigger set of bollocks than you.
Yeah,
it's like, and generally, the biggest bully is usually the one who has the most power and is the one who's telling you what to do. It's that thing of he tries to do it and it obviously just doesn't come off. Nobody pays any attention to him. And I think that's the really interesting thing. Like, he's walking around cock of the walk and he's like smug look on his face when he dresses up as Claude, but nobody pays any attention to him. Nobody really goes like, well, I think there's one dude who looks at him and goes, and then just goes back to what he's doing. And I think furthers that point of like, it's just another dude. It's just another person who's gone to war.
In this situation, I do, in my head, I interpret it a bit that Berger. I think there's a part of Berger that is like Claude, like because Claude sort of, he grew up out of town with his dad. I assume this is what we know about him, really. That he's maybe a bit more traditional in the sense, but he's also got this thing of I'll consider in serving for my country. I've been called or whatever. I'm going to serve for my country, and he believes in this sort of ideal a bit enough to go through with it, and he feels there's a purpose to that. As a lot of people do, and I just think maybe there's a bit of Berger that has that too. Like most men have this thing of like, well, actually, because he doesn't like wussy out in the sense that he doesn't cause a big kerfuffle and go, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, he just keeps marching. And I think he actually part of me thinks he sort of makes a sacrifice for Claude. He's like, well, this is how it's going, and he just, I think maybe he just goes, I'm going to do this for my friend who might. I think it might go through his head.
I think I think there might be even like an element of naivety about it.
Yeah.
Whereby like people, it's so far detached from what actually happens over there, because until you're over there, nobody knows what happened. You might see the pictures on the telly, you might see the aftermath, but actually it being there and you can smell it and you can taste it and you can feel it. It might be a thing of like, oh, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. It can't happen to me. Everything's going to be all right. And then, the naivety of going, oh, if I just get on this plane, I'll be fine. When I get over there, I can say I'm not really. It's that whole thing of just, oh, it'll be okay. And obviously it never, for Berger, it doesn't end up okay. And I think it's that thing of nobody really knows, we're talking about it, but we unless some horrific, catastrophic thing happens, we will never know what it's like to be at war and to be on a battlefield. But, lots and lots of people do know what it's like, but until you've done it, nobody knows what it's like.
Yeah, I get the sense. It's a weird thing because there's definitely a terror in Berger's eyes. Like, he's definitely worried and he feels out of his depth. Like he maybe maybe he does just freeze actually, and he's just doing what he's told. You know what I mean? And maybe
the bravado's gone. I think
also he's been brought up by like a reasonably normal family, so I get the impression he's not like a sort of fu mum kind of person.
No, so I think it's the whole thing a lot of the time, or where his rebelliousness isn't that rebellious, but he's just around a lot of people who just buy it, who just accept it, and don't question it, and that aren't, like nobody looks too hard and be like, well, how much of a hippie actually are you? Like everybody just goes, oh yeah, fine, cool, whatever. And actually here it's a situation where it's like somebody, he doesn't know what to do because people aren't like just accepting, that, it's not, well, they are accepting him, but not for who he is, it's for who they think he is, or for what he stands for, which is another body. I keep going back to that point. I don't know if you've noticed.
I think as well, the two musical movies I like, as I've probably said enough on here before, I like other ones. I like The Wicker Man too. Oh my God, they all have similar endings. I like Jesus Christ Superstar. I like, obviously, we all know the ending to that. And he doesn't actually like rise or anything at the end of Jesus Christ Superstar. It kind of has a bit of a cool thing in that movie because Jesus dies in that movie and on the cross, and then at the end they all get into like a camper van and go off into the desert. It's a great movie adaptation, I think. In any case, I actually think I think, and some of the performances I love so much, but Hair is more. It's a nicer watch in a way, but just because the music is it's not. It hasn't got the symptoms of like a bad mix. Basically, you can watch it and experience the music to how it probably should be felt. But The Wicker Man has I think it's pretty much a musical in a weird way, and all of them have this quite thought-provoking ending. Really, like
bleak.
I mean, Jesus Christ Superstar, thought-provoking enough to like inspire a whole religion, right? Do you know what I mean?
Well, suppose you can call that influential.
Yeah, and this, get the switcheroo, the sort of thought of like, oh God, this is bleak, and then The Wicker Man, maybe I just like this type of genre, this type of big endings.
I mean, as a general rule of thumb, I like a bleak ending.
Yeah, okay.
Like, I think a bleak ending, probably because it's more thought provoking and it's more, it hits home a little bit more. Thinking back, spoilers for anybody who likes Hades Town, that has quite a bleak ending.
Okay.
And that's 100% my favourite musical. And I think it has similar aspects here to where it's like, in that stage show, all the band are on stage. You can see them playing.
Okay, that's cool.
It feels like there's a lot of individuality involved. It doesn't feel like, people are interchangeable. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for a bleak ending. I don't really like happy endings. Because I think more often than not, a lot of the time, life isn't a happy ending. Things are left unanswered. Things are kind of just end, but don't really have a, you know, there isn't any kind of resolution to a lot of stuff. And I like the fact here it is just, you don't really know anything about what happens to the rest of the gang
No.
afterwards. You don't really know, other than the fact he dies. You don't really know what happens to Berger. It's just, it happens. It happened, and it's kind of just presented to you, and you see that it has happened, but not what happened.
I think as well, like, why, because of the ending of this movie, you actually almost want to watch it again for the good bits. And in that, like, life, like you when you think back, and if something bad happens, you can think back to the really good times of life. Like when you were
Yeah, I
in the
mean,
park
I've
doing
I've heard the
exercise.
phrase, and whilst I don't necessarily agree with it, I see the sentiment in it, where where the lows are low because of the highs, and the highs are highs because of the lows, whereby we only experience the highs of life because we also experience the lows of life, and the things that are difficult because we've had positives, generally speaking. So I can't, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I get the sentiment behind it, and I know what you mean. You kind of get to this ending, you're like, oh fuck, Berger's died, and what does that mean for that group? Like, they're all there and they're all mourning, but was he the glue? Was he the person who he was the one who was like the impetus for like pretty much everything. He was the one who was like, let's go and get Claude. Let's go and see Claude. He was the one who was like, oh, let's bring this Claude dude in to begin with. He's the one, oh, let's chase after this. He's always at the front leading. So what does happen to the rest of the group? And I like the fact you don't get it, but you kind of want to go back and watch the rest of it and go, let's go back to when it was great, and when it was like, when people were getting high and like crazy shit was happening. Let's go and watch that, because, it makes us savour that a bit more, because we know that horrible shit's coming. So I kind of get that. And then, as a general sort of ending scene, obviously we have this scene where a load of sort of hippies or protesters or whatever you want to refer to them as are there at the Lincoln Memorial, and kind of it's a really sort of strange sight to be at a memorial for horrific tragedies and see so much joy.
Aren't they at the house? The White House. I think.
Are they at the White House?
I think they're at the White
Did
House.
I say the
I
Lincoln
don't know much
Memorial?
about the sort of. I don't know if
Essentially somewhere where they're yeah.
I think they're at the White House. I think.
Yeah, I think you might be right,
because they were at the memorial on the scene where they're doing the interpretive dance for the crowd. Yeah.
Isn't the Lincoln Memorial near the White House?
Maybe. I don't know.
I swear it's just across the.
Oh, is it across the way?
I'm going to Google this, because I got a feeling like a load of Americans are going to be like, how do these people not know where
really
it is?
Sorry. Yeah,
my geography isn't particularly great.
Right from your window, you can see Big Ben though, Ryan, can't you?
Yeah, and the Taj Mahal, if you look to the left, and if you look behind, you can actually see Black Beauty.
Yeah, so
the White House and Lincoln Memorial. So let's go.
See how close. I see the geography.
So I think the White House looks out over the Lincoln Memorial.
Oh, and that okay, they're there.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, we've never been there, Ryan. How would we know?
No, true. I mean, it is quite a prominent thing of American geography. But as I just said,
if you just stood there and turned around, we'd know.
I can see why you'd think it's the White House, because it does look quite White Housey.
Yeah, I thought that's where they were.
I mean, it's all in Washington, D.C., so it can't be that far.
Yeah.
Mind you, America is a big place, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I don't know how big Washington is, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Ryan, how does it leave you feeling, that movie? Like...
I mean, watching the movie and doing this episode has made me sort of be like, quite obviously very, very lucky that we don't have to experience any of the shit that, people of, our grandparents' generation had to, and people in America during Vietnam had to. Very, very grateful that we have the privilege to watch a film, sit down, have a chat about it and, you know, talk about these issues. That's quite a privileged thing to be able to do. And so I suppose without getting too preachy, and I can hear a load of our listeners going, oh God, it's turned into that type of podcast, but quite grateful, I suppose.
Oh, that's nice, Ryan.
How about yourself?
I
Has
think
it changed? Did it change your life when you watched it?
I think the show would in person, maybe potentially. To be honest, I mean, everything I always think can change your life in a way. And this movie has had an impact on me for some reason. I don't know. It's a weird one. I think that was one of the best sequences I've ever seen of, like. There's a few drug sequences I like in films and series. I won't go through them all, but I think that sort of acid LSD trip they have in that is done so well. And I also think that one of my favourite bits as well is when he goes missing after that, and they're like, "Oh, where is Claude gone?" And then they find Claude, and then he
he's
goes,
just kind of standing.
yeah, he's like,
where did you go? And he's like, where did you go?
Yeah, like, where'd you go, man? I think there's just there's like realness to the film. It doesn't hold your hand. There's a reason why you're on your phone when the bit's right. And I get it, because I was like, you know, I was probably doing the same. It's really, it doesn't hold your hand. It's like a sort of, it doesn't really, just it's sort of happening, and you can choose to watch it or you're not. It's not like hanging on everything, and then all of a sudden, I think, it starts to be what the whole picture is revealed kind of on the last scene, I would say. And then that's what gives it this sort of thing that a lot of great movies had, that, just you just want to watch bits of it again, or watch YouTube clips of some of your favourite scenes. Or
you want to tell your mates about it, and you want to say, oh, have you seen this?
Yeah.
Like,
I've said that a lot.
The biggest thing sort of takeaway from it that I initially had was, I can so tell why Simon likes this. This seems like right up his street. The sort of things that you were saying were the things that I thought, I bet he likes this about it. I bet the one of the things he likes about the music is the kind of rough around the edges rawness to it. The fact that it feels like it's actual musicians. And I was pretty much on the money. And I think that's the thing. It's, when something resonates with you so much that you want to share it with other people, I think is always a really sort of great thing to be able to do. The problem is if people don't like it as well, you're like, no, why don't you like this? Which is the problem I have. I'm like, nobody ever feels the same way about the exact same thing that I do. But
I know I tried to be pretty preachy with Jesus Christ Superstar. No one was having it, but I think this one's almost a bit easier to tell people. I don't know, actually. These films, like, they kind of fall into obscurity a bit. Like, people like seeing the musicals and stuff, but these to me are like, I don't know. They really take me there. This film.
It's very good about, like, picking you up and plonking you right in a time and in an era and in a vibe, and you instant, like, one of the first things I said was the music. You said timeless, and I said it takes you back to that time. And what I didn't mean it.
No, you are right.
But it's very much, you feel like you know where you are when you're listening to it.
I agree. With you.
Sometimes you listen to stuff and you go, I don't quite know what this is or where I am, or you know what I mean. Whereas here, it's like, I know where I am, I know what I'm doing, I know who I am as a person listening to this.
Yeah. Can I just tell you quick, Ryan? Because it is funny. There's a show at the moment on called The Couple Next Door.
I've seen that advertised. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it looked trashy, so we thought we'd watch it a bit, because we kept seeing the trailer is on this little caravan holiday, and we was like, that looks so trashy. I just want to see what's going on. And then it's set in Leeds, and the accents come in and out, a bit like that Harry Styles accent.
Yeah.
In that Don't Worry Darling movie.
Yeah.
That movie. Oh God, no. And anyway,
not a fan?
No. No, and I thought it was terrible. And I don't say that often.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite interesting, because I didn't think it was too bad.
Oh,
and you thought it was terrible, so I wouldn't say it was terrible. I mean, flawed, but I mean, yeah, inevitably there will be.
And just some weird accents going on. Anyway, and this, you're set in Leeds, but it's set in some crazy suburbia that could be in America. And then, like that show, not necessarily the music, but you're right. Like, sometimes the music, it can really spin you out of when is this film set, and and all the acting. I mean, you know, we don't know about like the regional accents of America that well, but you know, it feels like you're in where it's set. I think you know, people traveling from different parts of America, I'd imagine. Anyway, yeah.
So in terms of further watching, I think we've mentioned obviously Jesus Christ Superstar, which was kind of my biggest one in terms of movie musicals. It's very similar in that rawness and in that kind of, it's not perfect, but it works because you get the emotion from it. Hairspray is another one, which is on the face of it quite fun, but it has quite a lot of political kind of statements to make. And not a musical, but if you like kind of, you know, a look at that type of subject genre, something like Born on the 4th of July, Tom Cruise puts a great performance in. And then another musical, which I think if you like the music from this, you'll probably like, is something like Rock of Ages, which is sort of more like 70s and 80s classic rock. But I think you could probably find something to like in that.
I think the director, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah. I mean,
think
we haven't even mentioned Milos Forman, who directed it, and it's crazy to think that he went from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to this. You know, that's not. With directors now, it's usually you can see what type of movie they're going to direct next because, oh, that worked, let's do that again. That's a massive jump, and it's sort of similar, but sort of not similar at the same time, and a bit of a risk. Go from doing, you know, a really great Oscar-winning film about mental health and then go and do a musical. It's a crazy jump. 4 years difference.
I think he is I reckon he is, you know, when things just line up. I think this could have been made a terrible. I know every movie could have been terrible, but I have a feeling that the alternatives to this, the alternatives we could have got from. I think you could actually annihilate this in a musical. I think it could be cringy.
I feel like you could have done more what I would call choreographed set pieces, where, you know, like for example, the only one they really do where it's properly choreographed is the one where Claude is walking through the people just about to go to the conscription office, and they all turn around and kneel down, and it works because you haven't seen that. Whereas a little bit like Wicked, where, oh, there's a big open space and there's all these people and they're all dancing and doing the same dance. That kind of big dance break set piece that you see a lot in musicals. I feel like that would have been the wrong move to take. I like the kind of freedom and expression that is in there, where it doesn't look like it's been choreographed. Obviously it has, but it doesn't look like that, if you know what I mean.
The one that it reminds me of, so One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I actually want to watch it again because it's been a long time since I've really seen that film. It's one of the films my mum likes, and, you know, I've seen it probably more than once, but I couldn't recount, like, the scenes.
I'll be honest, I've never seen it.
Oh, fair.
Never seen it. And
you'd like it, yeah.
Because I've never been in the right frame of mind to watch it. Like, I feel like it's one of those films where you have to give it time and space. And actually, you know, there's some films that you can just put on and not really watch, it's just on, or you just put on over and over again. Whereas I feel like that's a film that you really need to, like, right, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch this.
Yeah. Oliver Twist, I don't know why, just the Oliver Twist film, it has those big set pieces like you just mentioned, but it almost does it in a way that's a bit like this. It's like the bit where they all kneel down is in like a high street of New York, so it's kind of really powerful to see like a whole commuters crouched down. And in Oliver Twist, you know, the scenes of like the crazy markets dancing around is actually quite visual for film. I think it really works. And I just had another film the other day. I was at a gig and then I spoke to this guy afterwards, and he was telling me, and it's the same reason why you've not watched, what do you call it, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, is the Blues Brothers. I've never seen it. Christine's always having a go at me.
Same. I know. People are going to be screaming.
And I think that I might, you know, it might just be that all roads lead to Blues Brothers. You know, like it might be because I've put that one off for ages. People are like, how have you not seen that? You're absolutely loved that. And I'm like, I
think sometimes that's the problem, is that there's such a big kind of aura around something. It's kind of why I didn't watch The Godfather for years, because everybody spoke about it and everybody said it was great. And I was just kind of like, oh, I want to watch films that nobody knows is great, and it feels like that's why I feel like sometimes like The Prestige, like that is a big mainstream movie, but it's not a film that everybody says is their favourite movie. Whereas you speak to a lot of people of a certain type, they'll say, "Oh, The Godfather, greatest movie ever made."
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes when you feel like you've got your own tiny little thing and nobody else really knows about, feels a little bit more special. Whereas if Hannah does this thing where if everybody jumps on the bandwagon, she immediately just doesn't like it. So like one of the example was like when the football comes around and it's England in the World Cup or whatever. It's not that she doesn't like football. It's just everybody going on about England. She suddenly hates it because everybody's going on about it.
Yes,
and I think it's a little bit like with Wicked. I think it was the same thing. Everybody was saying how much they loved it, and she was just like, nope, didn't like it.
You know what? I got that feeling from Fallout, the series. Because, like, you know, I'm like, yeah, I've played Fallout 2.
Yeah.
I was playing since number 2. Do you know what I mean? The top-down one. Like, and people are like, no, I've played, I like Fallout series. They're really fun games. Like, they're not fun. Fallout 2 wasn't fun. Do you know what I mean? Fallout 2 was hard.
A lot of people who say, oh, yeah, I love Fallout, started at Fallout 3.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's like, you know, why do it? It's so funny, isn't it? But yeah, so the Fallout series I love, but I secretly have a thing in the back of my head. It's like, you know, it's like Amazon delivery vans with Fallout labels on, and you're literally like, this was my childhood growing up thinking I was cool.
It's that,
and now I'm not.
It's
cool
a little bit like that thing of like I remember doing it in school with like Biffy Clyro, because Biffy Clyro, as you all know, was like kind of yours, but mainly sort of like me and Tom. We were like. Tom showed me this band called Biffy Clyro. Nobody else in school knew about Biffy Clyro. And then after a couple of years, they released Puzzle, and certain songs like Saturday Superhouse were more mainstream. And suddenly all of these people who have never listened to Black the Sky, to Infinity Land, or to the Vertigo of Bliss, and never will, are suddenly going around saying, oh yeah, I love Biffy Clyro. I was like, you've listened to one fucking song. And I understand that is such a gatekeeping mentality.
That's what fandom is.
But it is that thing of like, you know, nobody will know, or very few people will know the real joy of listening to the opening of the song 27 on the drums. Like, there's very few people who will understand that, and that makes it so special. And I think that's the thing. Hair feels a little bit like this, where even amongst musical fans, not everybody mentions Hair.
It feels cool, Ryan. It feels cool to be the person that, have you seen Hair?
Yeah, yeah. And if somebody I said this on the Phantasm episode, where I use that as like a barometer of like, if I like you as a person, are we going to get on? Is I go, have you seen the film Phantasm? And if they go yes, I'm like, I want to talk to you then, because you've watched Phantasm and not a lot of people have seen Phantasm. Yeah. And it's like what you're saying, have you seen Hair?
Yeah, have you seen?
And if they go, I have, you're like, tell me more. Yeah. You know, it's that thing of going, oh, okay, well, you might be somebody that I think is an all right person then.
Yeah,
everybody's seen Wicked. Everybody knows Wicked. So if you say, oh, I love Wicked, I love musical theatre, it's like, no, you like Wicked. Yeah. You don't like musical theatre. Musical theatre is like, have you heard of this thing that nobody else has heard of? And to be fair, there's probably people like Hannah who are into musical theatre who are saying, how are they saying this about Hair? Everybody knows Hair.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we're not in that crowd.
We don't know.
You know, we're the ones who are currently trying to gatekeep something that the gatekeepers are saying, get away, you know. So.
But what a beautiful thing Hair is. Are we going to do a rating?
I kind of gone away from ratings because I've realised how arbitrary they are. They don't really mean anything at all. I think people will kind of know how we feel about the film from listening to the episode. So, but if you were to, what would you give it?
I'll score it in a different way. I'll score it by interpretive dance, and then you can see how.
Am I going to have to film it and put it up on the YouTube channel?
You can see how good it is.
Whoa, I mean, people can't see this, but that's a high score.
Yeah, basically, full-on vibe. I would say it's like if I was to have a sort of cinema party at my home, I've made people watch Jesus Christ Superstar, like if like by accident, you know, like I've like, oh, have you not? And that is quite ridiculous. However, I think doing that with hair is actually fine. I think you can force someone to watch hair.
It seems a little bit cooler. You know, I think there may be an element of Jesus Christ Superstar where people think you are like trying to almost convert them to religion.
I used to think
whereas with this, it's almost like, you know, to a lot of people, taking drugs is cool. So there's that element to it. And I'm going to score this, but I'm going to tell you because admittedly, Hannah's always gone on about hair, and I've always kind of gone, and scoffed at it. And when you said, have you ever seen hair, Brian? I was a little bit like, no, I haven't. I don't really want to do hair.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. But if one thing I've learned from doing the podcast is to watch things that you probably wouldn't usually watch or like, because you might be surprised. And this is one of it, because it may not be my favourite movie, but there's a lot to like here. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a 7.
Ooh.
7 out of 10.
I feel like because you've rated it, I have to rate it. So I can't think of anything I'd change in it or make better for this musical and this film. For me, it's a full Barnet of 10s.
Full Barnet of 10s. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bury Our Bones with Cinema. We really appreciate you joining us as we deep dive into the world of film. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages to stay informed. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram at Bury Our Bones with Cinema. You've been listening to Jimmy Murphy, Simon Key and Ryan Etherington. We will see you next time for more cinematic discussions and hidden treasures. Until then, don't forget to keep your bones buried in the world of cinema. And it will be a one-button job. Boom, 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 boom.
I have a terrible tendency to just scroll about and you're talking when we're doing it. I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird, but I suppose
maybe if you listen to it back, see if it sounds. I was like, I'm gonna have to stop it. You're listening back like.
Good job I observed that well, wasn't it?